Masters of Parallel Universes by Dmitry Orlov, February 10th, 2015. Much as we may dislike the fact, the results from quantum physics are unequivocal. Parallel universes do exist. Schrödinger's cat is both alive and dead at the same time, while it exists as a probability distribution, which is resolved into either a live cat or a dead one by the act of opening the box and observing it. But until the observation is made, both parallel universes can be said to exist, and there is no way for us to know which one of them we inhabit. Quantum effects dominate in the micro realm of subatomic particles. For instance, the laptop on which I am typing this contains millions of transistors, which are created by implanting ions into silicon substrates to create patches with built-in electric fields and interconnecting these patches with etched aluminum wiring. Each transistor relies on the phenomenon of quantum tunneling. While in normal physics it is impossible for an electron to find itself on the wrong side of a built-in electric field, in quantum physics the electron is a probability distribution, not a particle, and quantum tunneling works reliably enough to support the entire electronics industry. But if you scale your circuit up, the chance of a pickup truck successfully tunneling through a brick wall becomes too minuscule to be of practical interest. It is possible, but it would take anywhere between right now and several lifetimes of the universe hence to observe that result. Oddly enough, such quantum effects are quite normal to observe within the political space. Here the physical objects involved are far too large to give rise to the parallel universes of quantum physics, but the narratives they give rise to are not. This is because the narratives are a matter of perception, and there can be historical periods, such as the present one, when the peephole through which the political establishment and the mainstream media allow us to see the world becomes so tiny that it becomes a toss-up as to whether or not any given photon will manage to find its way through. Here reality becomes fractured into parallel universes as soon as we make the realization that we are being lied to. Were there weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? No. And the vial of white powder which Colin Powell menacingly held up at the UN was fake. The Iraqi mobile biological weapons factories did not exist. Was Al-Qaeda active in Iraq prior to the US invasion? No. We know that it wasn't. These lies are now known to be factual, uncontested, commonplace knowledge. Next, do we make the arbitrary leap of judgment and declare that that's all the lies we will have ever been told? Or do we admit the possibility that this is only the tip of an iceberg of lies, that lying is a modus operandi for the operatives behind them? If we do, then to be conservative, for every official narrative we must construct one or more unofficial but also plausible, and perhaps much more plausible narratives. Each of them constitutes a parallel universe, and we can't know which of them we inhabit until some happy accident, a leak, an investigation, a damning bit of physical evidence, or an outright admission of complicity or guilt collapses the probability waveform, destroying all the parallel universes but the real one. Many people have been conditioned to think that this is the realm of conspiracy theory. Unfortunately, the term doesn't apply. First, the existence of a conspiracy has to be accepted as a given. Nobody ever perpetrates a heinous act of murder, mayhem, and destruction by telegraphing their intentions ahead of time. If they do, the event usually doesn't go off as planned, and in such cases it is usually announced that a conspiracy has been uncovered and a plot thwarted. Thus, the use of the term conspiracy is gratuitous. It goes without saying that there always is one. Secondly, the term theory is gratuitous as well. A theory is a mental construct designed to account for a given set of observations. But what if all you do is point out the observations, which are in the public domain, there for all to see, and make no effort whatsoever to account for them? However, there is one theory that accounts for a very large class of such observations, and it is so simple that it is often overlooked. It is this, that the government and the official sources of information are normally lying. We already know that they have lied in the past. Iraqi WMD and Al-Qaeda in Iraq are two particularly well-known examples, but there are many others. The question then becomes, when did they stop lying, if in fact they did? Was there a conspiracy to stop lying? There would have to have been one, because we certainly haven't heard any statements made by public officials to the effect that we will now stop lying. Or did they spontaneously all stop lying at the same time? The probability of that happening is pretty low. It could, of course, happen any time between right now and several lifetimes of the universe hence. So if you believe that they have indeed stopped lying, then I suppose that makes you a conspiracy theorist par excellence. The conservative assumption is that they are still lying. There are lots of people who have been working to keep these parallel universes alive in one form or another, by collecting and collating bits of information, by offering partial explanations, by evaluating the official explanations as to their logical consistency. They have been doing this in spite of being ostracized as conspiracy theorists. To be fair, they have sometimes been glorified as truth seekers or truth tellers, and that must provide an ego boost for some people. But really, what they have been doing is generating and sustaining alternative narratives and keeping parallel universes alive, so that at some time in the future we will find out which one we have been inhabiting all along. Some people make the mistake of refusing to listen to and explore these parallel universes because it makes them ill at ease not to know which one they happen to inhabit. But if you accept the extreme likelihood that the official narrative is a bunch of lies concocted to hide the truth, then there is some comfort to be gained in at least knowing something that might not be a lie. Once the initial hesitation is past, it becomes a fun, if somewhat macabre, hobby, because puzzling evidence jumps out at you just about everywhere you care to look. An important precondition of being able to interpret the result of Schrodinger's thought experiment is being able to figure out what a cat looks like. Here is a specific example. Currently, there are two parallel universes. In one, Russian troops have invaded Ukraine. In the other, Russian troops did not invade Ukraine. What makes this difficult is understanding what is meant by Russian troops. There are Russians in eastern Ukraine. There are troops in eastern Ukraine. A lot of the troops in eastern Ukraine are in fact Russian. But there are no Russian troops in eastern Ukraine. Get it? To qualify as actual Russian troops, they would have to have enlisted in the Russian military and would have to take their orders through the Russian chain of command, and these ones obviously don't. There is strong political connection with Russia, but the military one is tenuous. The latest proof of Russian invasion offered by the Ukraine's president Poroshenko in Munich consists of some Russian internal passports and military service certifications found in eastern Ukraine. Funny thing is, when you are inducted into the Russian military, you have to surrender those civilian documents. Sometimes a perfectly viable, though quite short-lived parallel universe can be concocted by twisting things in small ways. But most of the time, a parallel universe pops into existence when things get twisted in impressively brazen and shameless ways. A lot of people start with 9/11. The Twin Towers collapsed because they were hit by jet airliners, because, you see, kerosene melts steel. Was it special magic kerosene, and were the buildings were made of special magic steel? Maybe that's why, since when the skyscrapers can't be insured against fire anymore. Previously, it was thought that skyscrapers can't collapse due to fire because they are made of steel, and a hydrocarbon-based fire isn't hot enough to melt it. What fools those civil engineers must have been. Turns out all you need is some kerosene. Then the two skyscrapers spontaneously collapsed into their own footprint, all on their own, and so the entire industry of demolition experts, whose job it is to mine tall buildings with explosive charges and detonate them under computer control to keep the buildings from toppling over, has since been retired. Skyscrapers are now known to pose a huge fire hazard due to the melty steel of which they are made, and they must all be demolished right away. But don't hire any demolition experts, since we know now that their entire industry was a hoax, because skyscrapers collapse into their own footprints all by themselves. Just take some retired old jets from American Airlines, they have plenty of them, and fly them into the skyscrapers unmanned using remote fly-by-wire technology. Another plane hit the Pentagon. That plane had no engines, since none were found, but in spite of this it not only flew, but executed a pirouette worthy of a jet fighter. Also, it had no seats, the passengers must have mimed sitting down and buckling up, and no luggage, they must have traveled really light. The perpetrator's identity was found out thanks to a passport found at the World Trade Center site. It was a magic passport, unlike the steel girders of the Twin Towers. A kerosene fireball could not even singe it. Fast forward to the latest staged atrocity, the Charlie Hebdo massacre in Paris. The perpetrators were clearly well-trained, disciplined commandos who exhausted a flawless mission, making it likely that they were special service people of some country or other. But then one of them magically forgot his ID in the getaway car, just like that passport magically found in the wreckage of 9/11. Do commandos take their civilian IDs with them when they go on a secret mission? And then the alleged driver of the getaway car surrendered to the police, saying that he has an ironclad alibi. The fact that he surrendered was reported in the media. The reason why he surrendered was not. And then the person charged with conducting the investigation killed himself while working on his report. Does this report agree with the official narrative? Reminds me of another staged atrocity, the Boston Marathon bombing. The very large number of special ops people milling about the scene before the firecrackers went off has been noted, but clearly they had nothing to do with it. They were just enjoying their day off, all dressed the same. The two patsies who were blamed for it, the Saranov brothers, were well known to the FBI. After the firecrackers went off, a crew of specialists immediately descended on the scene, with actors posing as victims and fake blood being tossed about. Video evidence shows them taking a long time to stage photo ops of the supposed atrocity. The ensuing media campaign with Boston Strong stickers was identical to the Je suis Charlie campaign following the Charlie Hebdo event, and as of the Charlie Hebdo event, there was a concerted effort to kill the alleged perpetrators before they could answer any questions in ways that might contradict the official story. In the case of the Saranov brothers, the attempt to kill the younger one failed. The boat in which he was hiding, scared and unarmed, was riddled with bullets, and after he surrendered, an unexplained emergency tracheotomy was performed on him, but he is still alive, and defiant of the efforts to frame him. But the most interesting part came after the event, when Boston was placed under military occupation, with residents forced to stay inside their houses for fear of being machine gunned down by troops rumbling down the streets in APCs, supposedly in pursuit of a couple of kids. The real rationale for the event was to impose martial law in Boston, the cradle of the American Revolution, on Patriots' Day, which commemorates a signal event that started it. If you read into these events just a little bit, you just might come to the conclusion that the U.S. is no longer a constitutional democracy, but a military dictatorship and a police state ruled by an oligarchy that likes to stage gruesome special events to show just how far above the law it really is. Or take the Malaysian Airlines MH17 shoot-down over eastern Ukraine last year. Again, the media campaign was clearly set up before the event. The clairvoyant Western observers know who to blame. It was the Russian-backed rebels, and they used a weapons system provided by Russia. This was repeated endlessly, using a technique used in advertising, proof by repetition. Never mind that the rebels had no ability to shoot down that airliner, but the truth has been slowly dribbling out. Flight MH17 was shot down by a Ukrainian jet fighter from Dnipropetrovsk using an air-to-air missile. The rebels had no aircraft. Why was it armed with one? The name of the pilot is now known. The person who identified him is in witness protection. Russian investigators are pursuing leads, and there is a good chance that we will eventually find out who issued the criminal orders. I could keep going in this vein for a really long time, piling bits of puzzling evidence upon other bits of puzzling evidence, but the whole point of this exercise is to try to get across to you one very simple, basic point. If you insist on ignoring all the obvious lies you've been told for years and years and dismiss everything but the official narrative as a conspiracy theory, then that makes you something of a mind control victim, and I don't want you to be a victim. One last thing, if you find yourself living in a Schrodinger box, do what you can to avoid ending up dead. I'll leave it up to you to work out the details of that, but the hint is simple. Your likelihood of ending up dead is higher if you believe in lies. Don't be a dead cat. You have been listening to Masters of Parallel Universes by Dmitry Orlov, published February 10th, 2015 on cluborlov.com.